Imagine waking up one morning and discovering that three of the most powerful warships on Earth are suddenly moving toward the same region. Not destroyers, not submarines, but U.S. nuclear-powered aircraft carriers, floating military bases capable of launching entire air wars. Right now, reports indicate that the USS Gerald R is operating in the Red Sea. At the same time, the USS Abraham Lincoln carrier strike group has moved into the Arabian Sea. And military analysts are now discussing the possible deployment of a third supercarrier, the USS George H.W. toward West Asia. If that happens, it would mean 3 U.S. carrier strike groups positioned around the Middle East at the same time. That kind of naval concentration does not happen randomly. Each aircraft carrier represents one of the most powerful military assets ever built. A single carrier can carry 70 to 90 aircraft, including advanced fighters, electronic warfare jets, surveillance aircraft, and helicopters. Each carrier is protected by an entire strike group of guided missile destroyers, cruisers, submarines, and supply ships. Together, these forces can project military power thousands of kilometers inland. In simple terms, a carrier strike group can conduct large-scale air operations without needing land bases. And when multiple carriers appear in the same region, it often signals something bigger, either deterrence or preparation. The USS Gerald R. Ford, the newest and most advanced aircraft carrier ever built, alone represents more than $13 billion in naval power. It is capable of launching aircraft faster than any previous carrier and supporting high-intensity air operations for extended periods. Meanwhile, the USS Abraham Lincoln brings another full air wing and escort fleet into the region. If the USS George H.W. also deploys, the United States could soon have over 200 combat aircraft at sea within striking distance of the Middle East. That level of military power can dramatically reshape the strategic balance of an entire region. But the real question is not simply how powerful these carriers are. The real question is why they are moving there now. Because when multiple American supercarriers begin concentrating in one theater, history suggests something important may be about to happen. To understand why the movement of multiple U.S. aircraft carriers matters so much, we first need to understand how a carrier strike group actually works. An aircraft carrier does not operate alone. It is the centerpiece of a much larger formation designed to project power, defend itself from attack, and control huge areas of ocean and airspace. This formation is called a carrier strike group, often abbreviated as CSG. At the center of the group is the aircraft carrier itself, a nuclear-powered ship that can operate at sea for more than 20 years without refueling its reactor. But the real power of a carrier comes from the air wing it carries. A typical U.S. carrier air wing includes around 70 to 80 aircraft. These usually include advanced fighter jets such as FA-18 Super Hornets, electronic warfare aircraft like the EA-18G Growler, airborne early warning aircraft such as the E-2D Hawkeye, and helicopters used for rescue, transport, and anti-submarine missions. Together, these aircraft allow the carrier to conduct air superiority missions, precision strikes, reconnaissance operations, and electronic warfare. But the carrier itself must also be protected. That is where the rest of the strike group comes in. The typical carrier strike group includes guided missile destroyers, sometimes a cruiser, and often a nuclear-powered attack submarine operating nearby. The destroyers and cruisers are equipped with advanced radar systems and the Aegis combat system, capable of tracking hundreds of aerial threats simultaneously. Their vertical launch systems can fire Tomahawk cruise missiles, SM-2 and SM-6 air defense missiles, and anti-submarine weapons. The submarine adds another layer of protection by hunting enemy submarines and gathering intelligence beneath the surface. All of these ships operate together as a coordinated network. Satellites, airborne radar aircraft, naval sensors, and command systems constantly share data, allowing the entire strike group to react quickly to threats. In effect, a carrier strike group functions like a mobile military base at sea. It can patrol thousands of kilometers of ocean, launch air operations deep inland, and defend itself against aircraft, missiles, and submarines. This is why aircraft carriers remain one of the most powerful tools of military strategy. And when several of these strike groups move into the same region, the amount of combat power they bring can be enormous, which raises an even bigger question. What kind of situation would require multiple American carrier strike groups to gather in the same theater at once? When analysts talk about the power of U.S. aircraft carriers, they often focus on a simple idea: numbers. Because the real strength of a carrier strike group comes from the enormous amount of firepower it brings together in one coordinated force. Let's start with the aircraft carrier itself. A modern U.S. supercarrier, such as the USS Gerald R. or USS Abraham Lincoln, can carry roughly 70 to 80 aircraft as part of its carrier air wing. These aircraft include FA-18 Super Hornet fighter jets, electronic warfare aircraft, airborne radar planes, and helicopters. If 3 carriers operate in the same region, that number can quickly rise to over 200 aircraft. That means the United States could launch hundreds of sorties per day, striking targets hundreds of kilometers inland. But the carrier's aircraft are only one part of the strike group's firepower. The escort ships add another massive layer of offensive capability. A single Arleigh Burke-class destroyer carries around 90 to 96 vertical launch system cells. Each of those launch cells can fire different types of missiles, including Tomahawk cruise missiles for long-range precision strikes, SM-2 and SM-6 missiles for air defense, anti-submarine rockets for underwater threats. Some cruisers carry even more launch cells. If a carrier strike group includes 2 or 3 destroyers and a cruiser, the strike group may carry over 300 missile launch cells. Many of those cells can hold Tomahawk missiles, which can strike targets more than 1,500 kilometers away with high precision. Then there is the submarine. Carrier strike groups are often accompanied by a Virginia-class or Los Angeles-class nuclear attack submarine. These submarines can launch Tomahawk missiles, gather intelligence, and track enemy ships beneath the surface. When all of these elements are combined, the firepower becomes enormous. One carrier strike group can deliver dozens of precision airstrikes and missile strikes simultaneously. 2 or 3 strike groups operating together can generate a level of military power normally associated with an entire air campaign. This is why the presence of multiple U.S. aircraft carriers in one region attracts so much attention from military analysts, because the deployment of such forces is rarely symbolic. It usually signals that the United States is preparing to either deter a major conflict or respond to one. And when that much firepower gathers in the same theater, the strategic balance of the region can change almost overnight. When multiple U.S. aircraft carriers move toward the same region, military analysts immediately begin asking one question: what strategic objective is Washington trying to achieve? Carrier deployments are rarely random. They are one of the most visible tools of power projection and deterrence in modern military strategy. The United States uses carrier strike groups to signal strength, reassure allies, and warn potential adversaries that American forces are ready to respond if a conflict escalates. In the case of the Middle East, several strategic factors may explain why carriers are being positioned in the Red Sea, the Arabian Sea, and possibly other nearby waters. First, there's the issue of regional deterrence. The Middle East remains one of the most volatile regions in the world, with multiple conflicts and rivalries involving major powers and regional actors. Deploying aircraft carriers allows the United States to maintain a rapid response force capable of reacting to sudden crises. Carrier aircraft can strike targets hundreds of kilometers inland, support Allied forces, or conduct surveillance operations across large parts of the region. Second, carriers provide flexibility without relying on land bases. Unlike aircraft stationed at fixed airfields, carrier-based aircraft can move quickly to different parts of the region, depending on where tensions rise. This mobility gives military planners far greater operational freedom. Third, the deployment of multiple carriers creates a powerful deterrent signal. When adversaries see several U.S. carrier strike groups operating nearby, they understand that the United States can rapidly escalate its military response if necessary. This type of signaling has been used many times throughout history. During major crises, the United States has often moved carriers into strategic locations to demonstrate readiness and prevent conflicts from spiraling further. Finally, there's the possibility of preparation for contingency operations. If tensions increase or a regional conflict expands, carrier strike groups could support a wide range of missions, from enforcing maritime security to conducting air operations or protecting key shipping routes. In other words, the deployment of carriers does not necessarily mean war is imminent. But it does mean the United States is positioning itself to respond quickly if events escalate. And when multiple carriers appear in the same theater, the message is usually very clear. America is making sure it has the capability to shape whatever happens next. When several U.S. aircraft carriers move into a region like the Middle East, the consequences extend far beyond military strategy. They can ripple through global security, energy markets, and international politics. The Middle East sits at the center of some of the most important energy routes in the world. Key waterways such as the Strait of Hormuz, the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, and the Suez Canal serve as critical arteries for global trade. Every day, millions of barrels of oil pass through these narrow maritime corridors. If tensions escalate or conflict disrupts shipping routes, the impact could be felt immediately in global markets. Oil prices are particularly sensitive to instability in the region. Even the possibility of military escalation can cause sudden spikes in energy prices, affecting industries and economies around the world. This is one reason why major naval deployments in the region attract so much international attention. Beyond economics, there is also the issue of military escalation. When powerful forces from different countries operate in close proximity, the risk of misunderstandings or accidental incidents increases. Aircraft flying near each other, naval vessels operating in confined waterways, and military exercises can all create situations where tensions rise quickly. History shows that many conflicts begin not with a deliberate decision to start a war, but with small incidents that spiral out of control. Carrier strike groups are designed to deter conflict, but their presence also raises the stakes. If a confrontation were to occur, the scale of military power involved could escalate rapidly. Another factor is the involvement of multiple regional and global actors. The Middle East is a complex geopolitical environment where the interests of numerous countries intersect. Regional powers, global alliances, and economic interests all overlap in ways that make crises difficult to manage. A military escalation involving major naval forces could therefore draw in additional countries, transforming a localized crisis into a much broader international issue. That is why deployments of this scale are closely watched not only by military analysts, but also by diplomats, economists, and political leaders around the world. Because when several of the world's most powerful warships gather in one region, the stakes are rarely limited to that region alone. The consequences can quickly become global. In the end, the movement of aircraft carriers across the world's oceans is never just about ships. It is about signals. Signals sent across thousands of kilometers of water. Signals read carefully by allies, rivals, military commanders, and political leaders. When a single U.S. aircraft carrier enters a region, it represents an enormous concentration of power. But when 2 or 3 carrier strike groups appear at the same time, the message becomes even louder. It signals readiness. It signals deterrence. And sometimes it signals preparation for events that may not yet be visible to the public. The USS Gerald R. the USS Abraham Lincoln, and the potential deployment of the USS George H.W. Bush together represent one of the most powerful naval concentrations anywhere in the world. Each of these carriers is essentially a floating military base, capable of launching dozens of aircraft, coordinating missile strikes, conducting surveillance operations, and defending itself against threats from air, sea, and beneath the water. Together, they can project power across an entire region. But the real significance lies not only in their firepower. It lies in the strategic timing of their presence. The Middle East has always been a region where global interests intersect. Energy routes, trade corridors, regional rivalries, and international alliances. In such an environment, even small shifts in military positioning can change the strategic balance. Carrier strike groups provide governments with an option that few other military tools can match. They can arrive quickly, they can remain at sea for long periods, and they can move rapidly if the situation changes. In other words, they provide flexible power without permanent escalation. But that flexibility also comes with responsibility. Because when military forces of this scale gather in one place, the margin for miscalculation becomes smaller. Aircraft flying patrols, ships maneuvering through narrow waterways, and surveillance systems tracking each other across vast distances all create an environment where tensions can rise quickly. That is why moments like these often become turning points in geopolitics. Sometimes they lead to successful deterrence, preventing conflict before it begins. Other times they mark the early stages of a crisis that reshapes the region. Right now, the presence of multiple U.S. aircraft carriers in waters surrounding the Middle East raises an important question for the world. Is this deployment simply a show of strength designed to stabilize the region? Or is it preparation for a crisis that could unfold in the weeks or months ahead? The answer may depend on decisions being made far from the open ocean, inside government offices, diplomatic negotiations, and military command centers. But one thing is certain. When the world's most powerful warships begin gathering in the same waters, history has shown that something significant is often unfolding behind the scenes. And if you want to understand the forces shaping the future of global security, geopolitics, and military strategy, make sure you stay informed. Because the next development in this story could change the balance of power in the region, and possibly the world. Subscribe for more deep analysis of global military strategy, geopolitics, and the technologies shaping modern warfare. The story is still unfolding.